This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Sarah Jamgotch, and we're going to talk about creating emotional sci-fi horror on a shoestring budget. That's kind of our topic today, and we'll also talk about everything that tells your story. But I want to welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Like we're at over 1,200 episodes, been on there since 2016. So we've been a big purveyor of live podcasting as our jam. So that's what we like to do, and we
I'm
show up.
glad to be a part of it.
So, like one of the things that we like to talk about with people before we get to the heart of your story, what we ask you every guest is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
That's a great question. So, my family motivates me first and foremost. I do a lot of what I do for them, family by blood, but also family like my friends and the people that I've met along the way. So, I have multiple different families, and they all tend to motivate me in what I do every day. Also, my values of creativity and self expression and community are things that drive me every moment. And I'm just incredibly thrilled to work with such dedicated, passionate people every day with the work that I do. So the people are what motivate me to do the work that I do.
Yeah, I think it's similar. Why I'm a musician. You can kind of see my keyboards behind me, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty passionate about the arts. We started this podcast back in 2016, talking to singer songwriters. Then we
Oh, very
expanded
cool.
it to filmmakers, writers, any type of creative people. And then, we're in this space now where it's, somebody who's an entrepreneur, they're creative. But I
Mhm.
do love to just, talk to creatives that are doing like film and arts. And that's kind of
Yeah.
like where I like to go because of flow state, being in the moment, artistic creativity, what's the responsibility of the artist. And then the permission structure that allows people to become artists and voice, indie independent art, which is I really love to support people who are doing things that are like not part of the big studio systems or part of the big record labels or
Hmm.
indie artists to me are like the hope of the future because we do the art because we love it.
Exactly.
Because we
Exactly.
wanna hit the numbers that Jaws did in 1977 and when let's do 10 Jaws, let's do it again. It's like, why can't we have something original?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So you're what you call a multi-hyphenated storyteller?
Yes, I like to call myself multi-hyphenated because I do a lot of different roles in these creative works. I am a writer, a director, a producer. Sometimes I voice act or act. And so I wear a lot of hats during a lot of my indie productions, and do whatever is needed in the indie space. I work as production assistants for other friends and other crews. I'll hold lights, I'll make runs, I'll do anything I can. So I find that for me creatively, I can't put myself in a box as just one
Yeah.
thing. I feel like I'm multiple, and I'm really proud of that.
Well, I think it's really big because, I've always had that kind of mindset because when it comes to like the music that I've been involved in, I like to wear a lot of hats. I play the keyboards, I'll do the production, I'll do the music. I mean, in terms of like the stuff that normally people give to other people, I try to wear all the hats to
Yeah.
kinda get it to be my vision. Like, if you talk to, like, somebody who's a film director and have to be the screenwriter,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so they and sometimes they're even the producer because they've got a real specific vision, and they're kinda wearing all the hats, and that's hard, but, like, they if you know what you want, sometimes you can't let go of the reins.
Very true. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to let go, and sometimes it's just the budget kind of constrains me to have to do the things too. So,
Mhm.
it does allow the vision to kind of come to fruition a little bit clearer for myself. But sometimes I just gotta wear all the hats.
Yeah, because like, when you're talking about indie people or people on low budgets, there's so much capability today, with iPhones and with the computers that we have today and the software we have today that people, it's like 3D printing for like somebody who's an inventor. They can I can actually get that done without going to a machine shop that they have a CNC thing do it and we get off the track. But the idea of it is like you can actually execute
Mhm.
what you want to do with some of the tools today that would have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like you couldn't do that.
Yeah, for sure. And there's been a I think in our culture a shift where a lot of people that are singularly, I'm a photographer, or I'm a painter, those folks tend to be we want to be like them, but I find it hard to want to pigeonhole myself. So I think it's just who I am. It's just how it
Yeah.
has to be.
More holistic because like a lot of times everybody really wears multiple hats. But I think what happens is like people like in the music industry, your A&R people, they pigeonhole you.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
what the song you give the record label might be one genre, but you might not be an artist that stays in that genre.
Yeah.
And then if you're successful, then they want to keep you in that genre. And like,
Exactly.
well, you might have already moved beyond it,
Yeah.
and it's like it's very frustrating because they wanted you to do the same thing over and over in different, with maybe a different lens on it, but it's really
Hmm.
the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's a bit of imposter syndrome with it too when you go to something new that I like if I've never done I don't know, makeup or costume design, there's a bit of an initial feeling of what did I get into?
Yeah, you're
But that's
treading water.
fun.
Yeah, it's
Trying to,
like
yeah.
like Bowie used to say, like, he didn't feel artistically,
Mm,
like, relevant unless he was doing something that maybe stretched himself. Not that
exactly.
he was, like,
Yeah.
not gonna drown, but he's gonna try something that was different,
Mhm.
that he's
Yeah.
gonna go toward, like, the young Ame he went to, Young Americans versus Ziggy. He's working with, like,
Mm,
Luther Vandross instead of, like, a
mm,
hard rock psychedelic band, going into a different area, and he wasn't, like, the best soul singer at the time, but he had to ramp up
yeah.
to change into a genre, and he was always like a chameleon, change
Mhm.
into whatever he felt was like, "Well, this is what moves me now,
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what moves me now rather than what the label wants me to do."
Yeah.
So when you're shaping, like, your creative work at an like, a low budget environment, is like is that the concern, or is maybe the idea come before, like, the constraint, or does the constraint drive the idea?
That's a good question. So it really depends. Sometimes I'll get with a group of people and we say, we just want to make something this weekend. We want to make something this spring. Then it's more budget first. But sometimes I'm approached by people or I have an idea myself where someone says, I just really need to get this out there. And if it's something with where there's that drive, that need to get it produced or made or actualized, then I sit down with them and we say, okay, well, what needs to stay? What can we get rid of? What can we change? Does this location need to be on a bridge or can we do this elsewhere? Does
Mhm.
it have to be in 3 different locations or can we like move this into one but maybe outside? So it's a lot of I think working in tandem about what is the core idea and how can we kind of change that and still keep it but
Yeah,
within what we need.
get it to work, and like, a lot of times, like, I find myself limited by sometimes the constraints of my instrument.
Mm,
Like, and yeah, I could choose another instrument, but then it's gonna have a different, like, it's like what we call sound painting
mm,
in synthesis. Like, if I use a Moog, it's a monophonic synth. I can only play one note at a time. If
ah,
I'm using like a Hammond B3 organ, it's like it has ultimate polyphony. I can use how many hands I ever, as many hands as I want. But
yeah.
on a mono synth, I'm restrained, but that
Hmm,
restraint can color what I'm gonna do, and
yeah.
sometimes I
Yeah.
would choose the restraint because maybe that's gonna like black and white film
Mm,
compared to color film. There's a constraint in terms of, like, what you're gonna show on this in terms of tones, but then
yeah.
there's the aspect of the shadow and the lighting can be very significant. There might be certain things you can do in that genre and that style that you
Yeah.
really can't do with the color film, and
Yeah,
maybe
and
that
I
means something for this project.
completely agree. Yeah, sometimes the constraint almost kind of begets the creativity. It's like, we have to do it in this one space. We need to do it under 5 minutes. Well, then suddenly our brain is just, "Well, what about this? What if we did this?" Well, I think, and there's just something beautiful sometimes with constraints and low budget stuff.
Yeah, it can drive this kinda, in the moment,
Mhm.
and then you can decide like how many cut, how many versions you're gonna have. Because nowadays, like you don't have to roll the actual film. You got
Yeah.
digital film, so you can have maybe a lot of cuts, a lot of
Mhm.
like takes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
just in terms of storyboarding something out, or then actually realizing that doesn't work,
Yeah.
right?
A lot of times we do end up, on set and we are like, for example, I was doing a shoot and we were setting up in front of a grocery store. But we realized we never talked to the grocery store owner. So when we were 5, 10 minutes into shooting, we see someone roll out and kind of get upset. What are you doing here? Why? So we had to switch and we had another constraint. We needed to be close by. So it kind of spurred some creative moments
Yeah.
in that shoot, but I think it worked out even better than the original.
Yeah, sometimes that can happen because, I always like run into people with like the perfection trap,
Mm,
and I'm a
mhm.
purveyor of the happy accident.
Okay,
Now,
yeah.
a lot of times, what I find is the thing that's unplanned or kind of coming from a download, like an idea of like the muse sending me something.
Mm,
If I trust my instincts as a musician, the thing that I overly wrought that I like sketched out on the bars is really tight, but that
mm,
tightness actually doesn't meet the moment. That
sure.
when I actually go to do it, that the thing I did without really trying to match everything I put on the page, it actually seems more authentic or more vulnerable. It actually fits that moment.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's a cool place to be, and there's some people have a hard time. Like I run to classical musicians, they're like, "What are we actually playing?" Well, here's the chord chart, but we got a lot of room to fit in between.
Mm,
And some people have a hard time with like having that leeway. They
mhm.
don't want the leeway. They want it to be tighter.
Yeah. Maybe we should introduce them to jazz.
Yeah, well, that's the jazz boy. Modal jazz, fusion jazz is like, yeah, I have a framework, but I can adjust it. I don't have to stick with it.
Yeah.
But when you're working on like a narrative audio drama versus like a video drama or
Yeah.
something you're doing like a web drama or something short form, um,
Mhm.
like what are the things that maybe I don't know which one you prefer? You like to do the multiple things, so it's whatever fits what you're trying to do at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's audio is new for me at the moment, but it's been really eye-opening because the constraints are surprisingly not there as much. You can find any sound online. You can find background music and sound effects and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I find one and then that leads me on a trail to another." So, I've been surprisingly like feeling this expansiveness with audio drama versus a video effect, a video, medium. But I think at the moment, just kind of where I've been with my life, audio has been something I've been wanting to dabble with. And the story and the idea, it's set in rural mountains, and that's
Mhm.
hard to do in New York City. So
Yeah,
sometimes
like
the idea, it's
the radio play kind of mindset. If you go back to,
exactly.
like
Yeah.
Orson Welles was the big thing when he did a War of the Worlds like on the radio and people actually believed it because it was so
Hmm.
convincing. But like what you can do with like and listen to like The Shadow or with like all kind of these old radio, it kind of like to me is like like silent films.
Hmm.
When you don't have the words, you have to watch the actors what they do with their body and their hands and their
Hmm.
movement, and even like the silence between the words is
Hmm.
so important in like video film. But like when you're doing audio, it's like musicians, we live with this world. It's like we can paint this world
Hmm.
through the
Yeah.
tones of the different instruments, and then our voices can paint these pictures of these and we're building like this thing in maybe 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Like this story that like you listen to a Bruce Springsteen song, Born to Run, you're getting drawn into this New Jersey scene.
Yeah.
You're drawn into these like the protagonists, and you're drawn into the drama of it, and the kind of crescendo, decrescendo of it is like it has these movements, it has this emotion, and you see the picture in your mind.
Mhm. Exactly. It's been so interesting to visually, because usually I do the storyboarding with the video, but now I don't have to write it down, I don't have to sketch it because it can stay in the brain.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. And it helps me know what the audience is going through as well when they listen. What are they going to be picturing? So that's a really interesting medium.
And I kind of want to back into because I was a sociology major, but I understand you had social worker background. How much does that inform you in terms of your artistic style, the way you write?
That is a great question. It definitely impacts me with almost everything I do. I am so interested in the space in between what people say to each other. What does that held breath really mean? What are
Mhm.
the facial expressions? Really diving into character backstory. Everything's really character driven for myself. And it's because of this, I think, social worker background of trying to get to, core wounds and attachments and fears,
Harder to matter.
all
Yeah.
of these things. Yeah. So I really appreciate my social work background because it helps me see characters in a different way and in a maybe more flawed way. And that helps the writing, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it seems like, you think about the anti-hero is really interesting because they got, if you have the perfect hero, they're like a Superman. They're like perfect,
Yeah. I do
versus
tend to
somebody
write my anti hero.
like a little Peter Parker was the anti-hero. He's always something going wrong. Nothing's not
Mhm.
perfect, doesn't have enough money, always running
Yeah.
into like the problem if you have the character that has like he's not Bruce Wayne, right?
Mhm.
He's not a millionaire. He's not from outer space and he's stronger than everybody. He has flaws.
Mhm.
You're like Mary Shelley Frankenstein's like, oh, it's a monster.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
it
what's
makes
the difference?
people more connected. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's that depth of like, oh, he's got all this tragedy, all this
Eh
like all this pain. It's like you
Mhm.
can try to understand the psychology of it and the sociology of it, and just
Yeah.
it has more depth. It's like you're looking for the subtext, like you're saying, you're looking for the space between the words, the
Mhm.
meaning of the words before you like, do people really listen
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And it
when you
just
say something?
yeah, and with my work, what I try to do is everything is there something I can make someone feel with what I'm writing or what I'm making? And that really helps when the character has something that people can relate to, even though they may be like sci-fi fantasy characters. There's got to be something that we humans can latch onto,
Can
and
latch
that's
into. Yeah, you
yeah.
find, the cool thing with science fiction is you can build these kinda narratives that can really examine, like, social issues, like, Gene Roddenberry was famous for
Mhm.
bringing these social issues into his science fiction.
Exactly.
Like, the whole
Yeah.
idea of, like, a Vulcan was, like, McCoy was always saying these kinda, like, yeah, anti-Vulcan things. They were, like
Mhm.
so he's kind of showing, like, a racism without showing racism directly.
Yeah.
So you could, like, even, like, Rod Serling would talk about things in the Twilight Zone that maybe wouldn't want to be talked about if you weren't in a science fiction little context story. Like, you
Exactly.
could bring up the fear of the monsters on Maple Street, there's,
Yeah.
like, the kinda ideas that you can address with science fiction, has always been interesting to me because 'cause I've always got drawn into it because
Mhm.
they have all the subtext
Exactly. Yeah. The subtext.
that you can get to without handling it directly. And I always find just like the Victorian poets were famous with all their subtext, all
Oh
their
yeah.
multiple meanings to things or hidden
Mhm.
meanings or trying to get away with saying something that wasn't actually permissible in the time, so they kind of layer it.
Yeah. And I'm still working, as I still try my best to layer on that subtext. It's tough. It's tough, but working with other people really helps too because I don't have all the lived experience, so sometimes working with others really helps also create that world.
And the Easter eggs and stuff that you throw into things, that's why people sometimes have to take a couple of passes with people's work to
Mhm.
actually like, "Oh, it was actually it actually kinda hinted at this, but I didn't really pay attention." Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's actually like a little precursor to something that happens later in the
No
timeline.
foreshadowing. Yeah.
Foreshadowing is always interesting. So are you doing things that are kind of like serial based work?
Uh, well, so I have a show right now that's going to be 2 seasons with or I'm sorry, 1 season, 14 episodes, and that's one story arc. We may have another season. Um, and then I've done some short films recently, which aren't episodic or anything like that. Just full stories in a
Full
short.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
like the episodic type of work? Cause you have to stretch it out or
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's so much more space to play with. You create little mini arcs and mini journeys within each episode. It really helps developing the world first and then kind of plopping the character in and then seeing how they kind of navigate. There's just so much more room to play with an episodic sort of
Yeah.
narrative. It's daunting though. It's very daunting because that's a lot more pages, a lot more producing. But man, sometimes that payoff can be great.
Do you sometimes like in a later episode kind of redefine something as you're going? Like I had like you can actually say, well, yeah, I'm gonna take this thing that maybe I hadn't planned on doing and I actually gotta turn it into something more
Yeah,
significant.
sometimes, yeah, and it works out. And sometimes you got to go back and you got to fix something. So I like to have at least the whole story plan roughly
Yeah.
outlined before. But yeah, you get to have those nice payoffs. You get to change things and see how they grow and move.
So when you're kind of balancing the different, types of media you're doing, because
Mhm.
you're doing like film, you're doing web, you're doing audio. Are there
Right.
some things that are like the same no matter what area you're in?
I would say, you know, character driven arcs, talking about themes. These things are always very ubiquitous. Maybe not ubiquitous, but they're within the same thing all the time. It's talking
Mhm,
about, what is the climax of the story? Why are we doing this? Who's the audience? Things like that. The medium doesn't change, but the medium can change, but the core pieces of like why we're writing this, why are we doing this, can
mhm.
always be the same.
That's interesting. Now,
Yeah.
what's the responsibility of like being a showrunner, and how like
Yeah.
is it a lot to take on? And do you
It's
like find
yeah.
it like invigorating to take that on?
Yes, great question. I really love show running. So I had an opportunity to direct, but also show run a web series that I produced and directed. It's on YouTube. And I'm currently show running this audio drama called Frequency. It has been a blast to work. So I had as a showrunner, you have the initial idea, and you find writers that you want to work with, and yourself can write as well. And I see them as sort of like a facilitator. So we all sit in a room and we iron out the outline. We, got a little whiteboard. It was virtual. We had a little
Yeah,
whiteboard online.
that's interesting.
Yeah, we made sticky notes. We had Venn diagrams. We were just trying to like plot out what is this story really about. And it's also creating these guardrails for the writers because I think a lot of times writers have one idea and they're like, oh, well, what about this? Well, what if we went way over? And it's like, whoa, whoa,
You
whoa,
don't wanna jump the shark.
yeah, let's see, let's go back to why we're doing this and what we want to tell. So it's so exciting and so invigorating to be able to watch people just flourish as writers and still have this confidence and sort of know visually what's going to happen. It's a little part producer as well, working with voice actors, finding people to cast, finding audio engineers, this sort of, again, multi-hat
Yeah,
place
it's
that I'm
interesting, like,
in.
the teamwork. The teamwork is
Yeah,
kinda like, if you're in a sports team, like, everybody's got that role to get that play done. If you're in a band,
exactly.
in order to get that song done on stage, everybody's kinda gotta work
Mhm.
together to get that done. There's a
Yeah.
team building, and it's interesting with, like, writers, typically, you think it's, like, one writer, but with, like,
Mm,
if you have this, like, collaborative writing and then you have this team of
mhm.
writers, it's kinda like a team of songwriters. Like, you got Lennon,
Yeah,
McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo.
yeah,
They're all
and
writers,
definitely
and they all can,
exactly.
like, bounce things off each other.
Yes, they do, and it's funny, they all have their unique kind of strengths and what they're interested in. I knew and recognized immediately because I have 3 writers working for Frequency, that they each kind of gravitated to a particular part of the story, and to me, that my alarm bells went off and said, "Okay, great. We need to focus on this part." For example, she's in the woods, in the mountains for the first part of the show. One of our writers was really interested in her background as a scientist. Great, you're going to do the first 5 episodes. Another person was really interested in the middle, and then the other one was like, so we got like, it was an organic process
Wow. So they got the
to
best fit for what they could do.
exactly. Yeah, and I just felt really proud to be able to
facilitate.
highlight and yeah, share like this is really where you should be. And they've been really wonderful so far.
That's cool when you actually, can gauge people's strengths and don't put them in the wrong position. Because that's always
Yeah,
like the thing with the great coaches, they kind of know like
sure.
like
Yeah.
what the strengths are, and they don't put somebody in a role that actually doesn't actually, isn't going to work in that role. You know,
And they would crush it in any place, I gave it back to them. I said, "This is what I'm thinking, how do you feel?" And they were all game for it. So I said, "Yeah, let's do it."
it's just interesting how you can have that kind of the collaborative effort, what can do, like when you're kind of spitballing, you put it on the board,
Yeah.
it's like what, because sometimes people will come with something all fleshed out, right? Like they got
Mm,
the general idea. Like if you're a
mhm.
head writer and you
Yeah.
you come in with the thing, in a example, like I don't know, and I always do musical examples. Like Pete
Mhm.
Townsend was very controlling as a writer with
Mm,
the Who.
mhm.
Now, once he would bring a demo, it would be all flushed out. Like the song is actually there,
Hmm.
and then he'd give it to the rest of the band, and then Daltrey had a better voice, more powerful voice than his voice, and so he would reinterpret the vocals, and
Yeah.
Twisto would take the bass line and make it more complex. Keith
Mhm.
Moon, as the drummer, would take the very simple beat and make it way more
Yeah.
the complexity to it. So then is that people can take something and then they add
Mhm.
their capability to it, and then
Yeah.
that just like makes it shine if you allow people to actually bring their perspective or their expertise to something.
Yeah, and I left the end of the show actually completely open because I decided I don't want to decide where these writers are going to write wherever they want. Like, let's find out how we
Where
all
they
want it
want to go.
together to,
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
take it. So it's been so great to hear their ideas, and it's their show. It's really not my show because they're the ones writing it. So I'm proud to just kind of
That's
help move it
interesting if
along.
you're able to let the reins go that much, because some people can want to, it depends on the situation. If you get into a situation that's more collaborative,
Hmm.
then you let it kind of flow. You kinda got
Yeah,
that jazz flow
yeah.
where you let if somebody goes off into a little dissonance and comes back to
Mhm.
harmony and they go off, something a little
Yeah.
discordant, they go off here and like, maybe a little off tempo, we bring it back because like you can rein it back in, but you can kind of explore.
Yeah, and I would never have imagined this show going in the direction that it has. It's gone further than I could have ever imagined. So I'm just so glad that I work with them because I wasn't capable. Like it's not in my skill set. So this couldn't be done without them.
That's interesting that when people find themselves together that they can create something like a greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the
And that's
whole yeah.
mhm,
I mean, that's what's interesting about creativity. Because it's like
mhm,
everybody wants to find like the magic sauce that's
mhm.
gonna do, but sometimes it's like this kinda unknown, like what we call like the like what, the newfound sound versus the found sound.
I'm not
Where
familiar with that.
yeah, music, there's known tones, like, the tone of, like, a Steinway, the tone of a
Oh,
Stradivarius, this tone of, like a Hammond B3 organ. Now, you don't maybe know what tone like, harmony you're gonna write, but you have the overall tone. Like, a newfound sound could be something like it's a sound like you'd never heard before, like something on a synthesizer, like a sound that was m
mm,
made from an electronic instrument, that didn't exist before.
I
It was
see.
kinda
Yeah.
weird, like a science fiction sound or some weird sound that's like an amalgamation of a bunch of things you never really heard it before.
Yeah.
Or you run something through a filter and you change it. So, like
Mm,
in filmmaking, like how you run, like, the filters on the camera lenses and
mhm.
how you reprocess something or different angles will give a different perspective. So if you take it from this angle, it looks like this. You took it like that, it looks like that. The focus can be different. Like they have that same scene, but refocus what you're looking at or what you're
Yeah.
trying to emphasize. Then you change that perspective, and it can be not what it was originally. You can alter it.
Yeah, that's true. That I guess that's exactly how I feel with this. Yeah.
That's interesting because there's a lot of things with the arts. There's some similar aspects in
Mhm.
terms of like the idea of like sound painting or
Mm,
film, like the lens that you put on something or
mhm,
the
and how it can
filter
just be s yeah, yeah.
but in terms of, like when you started to write frequency or be in the middle of it, um, was this feeling like when you felt like it was going, it was just like when you know it's right. Like I guess
Ooh.
how does that come about? Like when you get the feel like this is the right mix, this is the right.
Like that, I have the right plot or something, you're
Yeah,
saying? Like,
yeah,
we're going in the
yeah.
direction? Ooh. It's hard to describe. It's really just, am I feeling excited about sharing this idea? And if I am, we're moving in the right direction.
Mhm.
If our writers, if our team is, excited to move to the next day and share stuff, then I think I'm doing it right. And sometimes if we are just writing for ourselves and, we're not thinking about an audience or, is this the right, what, maybe that's all that matters. And that the direction and how knowing that it feels right. It's just if we're doing it and we wanna keep doing it, that's right.
Yeah, because it's kind of
Yeah.
like the art for like the reason somebody picks up like a guitar and plays the blues is because they feel the blues.
Yeah,
And then if happens to be that the audience feels the blues, then they find that kind of a law of attraction. You put something out
exactly.
in the world, but it seems like today people are so into, oh, I gotta get the algorithm to get
Mm,
me like a million views. And if I don't get a million views or 1,000 likes in this moment of time, then I'm not successful.
yeah.
Versus, do I do the art for art's sake, or am I doing it for some other material reason?
It's a hard balance to hold, especially as someone who's a showrunner who wants to give success to these writers and the people that are on these teams. It is a hard, how do we do this for ourselves while also thinking about the future, and try to get people interested. And It's it can sometimes lead me astray where I'm thinking too much about the algorithm, but I have to remember why I do this. Like you said, what motivates me, the friends, the family, just being able to do something with someone is the whole purpose.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like it's really the SEO expert that
Mm.
can, it's really the marketing people. Like sometimes, like I think sometimes what happens is like artists, like I'm not the best like marketing guru, SEO
Mhm.
expert, knowing how to move something to the top of the list, right?
Yeah.
Getting the metadata or figure out how to get to the top of the list. Well, there are people who know how to do that. Now, when you're on a low budget, you have to figure out, well, how much of that am I gonna do versus
Mhm.
how much of the art I'm gonna do? And it's always
Exactly.
kind of the rub when you're an independent, like, I have to spend some time on that.
Mhm.
How much time on that do I spend?
Yeah. It's so tough, yeah, and then you get kind of pigeonhole yourself into one for a while, and then you're like, "Oh, I forgot I have to go in this direction now," and then, "Oh, gotta go back over here." It's this, like, push and pull constantly.
And it's always changing, like, the way these algorithms like, what was working last month doesn't
Mm,
always move it this month. It's like, say you so it's its own kind of, you know, it's its own space in terms of, like, expertise of, like, understanding how to stay on top of it is its own art. And there are
yeah.
actually people that are really good at it. And I was like, well, I can try to put time into staying up, being hip to what's new
Mhm.
and what's changing. So hashtags don't work. You got to put it in the description. Oh, you got to use the metadata in this way, or no, now you have to use it like this. It's like, okay, well, that's
Mm.
changing like so much.
Uh-huh.
So how
Yeah.
am I supposed to keep up with that?
Might as well just do the original thing, the creative thing, right? Because if it's gonna
Yeah.
change all the time, it's like, oh, I don't wanna, if I'm trying to find a theme or a thing that works today, but maybe not tomorrow, might as well just do the thing I wanna do
Yeah,
and
'cause it's
hope
kind
it
of like
sticks.
do the art because of art's sake. Like if I feel that I
Mhm.
want to do this like this kind of fusion modal jazz groove,
Yeah.
and I got inspired by something. I was walking through the woods and I saw something in the river, and I
Mhm.
saw a butterfly going here. I was like, oh, I want to get that feeling. I want to put that into music. Well, that's a
Mhm.
feeling that only I know because I'm the only one that saw that, right? So I'm trying to
Mhm.
put that into words. Like, well, how am I going to compare that to the algorithms? Like, I'm just going to try to
Mm.
match what I'm trying to do artistically and hope that resonates with somebody, like somebody's frequency that matches,
Mhm.
and then they pick up on it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So, like in terms of your projects, like frequency is like is that one of the big primary projects you're working? Do you want to talk about other ones?
Yeah, so that's the one I'm working on currently. I have a couple of short films in post production, so working with an editor right now. One film called Paint, which is about a painter who is going blind actually while he's losing part of his creative purpose,
Mm.
as he's supposed to be commissioning a painting for someone. And I had a second short film, which is completely different. It is a 1950s silent film style comedy
Oh,
set in Central Park. So my films can range from all sorts of genres and styles. And hopefully there's a through line of myself within it all. But those are some couple of things I'm working on now.
that's interesting. So you keep busy with a lot of different, like going in different directions. I think that's interesting because it keeps you like kind of alive. I like the ability to kind of just like meet the moment. Um,
Hmm.
and in terms of creativity, sometimes it's like if you don't give yourself a ceiling or you
Ah.
don't put yourself in a box like I am just this, right? And you run into
Hmm.
people like, music, say, well, I'm a techno DJ or I'm a, bass based in like beat type of guy. I'm beat hyper beat focused. But what if you want to do some psychedelic rock?
Hmm.
And now you've cut pigeons your whole self. It's like that's the only thing I'm doing. Am I going to become like the best? And sometimes
Yeah.
that happens. And people just like, I just want to be the best at X.
Hmm.
And you can
Yeah.
spend like 30 years trying to be the best at X.
Exactly. Yeah. And so sometimes for me, I'm like, well, I just want to try something. I'm feeling different today. Let's go in this direction. It's
Yeah.
fun and the beginner feeling does happen. But after a while, trying something new again and again kind of feels comfortable, I think. I
But I think it
understand.
also you got to it's like a through point of like everything you've done is
Mm.
feeding into the new thing you're doing. So it's not
Yeah.
like you're throwing out everything, all the experiences you've ever had. All
Hmm.
those things are still informing. You just maybe
Exactly.
are tipping into something that you weren't maybe the best at. Like maybe you got really good at
Hmm.
like, this like kind of like a special a type of science fiction story.
Hmm.
Like what if
Yeah.
you're like, no, like the time quartet, so you're into time. You're doing like
Mm-hmm.
playing with time like that. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
stay in that kind of genre because that's my jam. I like that idea that I'm gonna do all this time travel stuff. And like all your books are about that, all your projects are about that. And then suddenly you're like, well, you know what? I want to do something that's more like Kurosawa. I want to go do the King Arthur Kurosawa type thing. I was like, well, I'm gonna go that way.
Yeah.
You go whatever you're feeling and you're
Hmm.
passionate about. Like if because if you're kind of half stepping and you're not passionate, way people are gonna feel it.
Yeah. And sometimes I do worry that because I'm moving and changing so much that people are like, well, they can't pin me down, and
Depends on what you're doing.
yeah, and maybe that's okay. Maybe not being pinned down is great, but there's always that tug that's like, well, what if I did stick with this one genre? Would I, improve in a certain way? But it is true that everything informs the next thing. There's like different shots that I've done in earlier films that really helped me with this one, or, oh, I know how to compose a little bit better now for music, and now I'll like, try to add something like that for the next one. So
It's
yeah,
like
it
a
all informs.
progression. I think as you
Mm-hmm.
grow, like you're gonna necessarily kind of expand. Like you always go
Mm-hmm.
back to like the Beatles. They were like the ultimate kind of bar band in
Mm,
Hamburg, Germany, and then they became this like by the time you get to Abbey Road, they were like a forerunner of progressive rock bands, a
yeah.
forerunner of like a Pink Floyd or a Yes or a Genesis,
Mhm,
because they really got into very experimental structure, and they're out in Abbey Road is like a very experimental structure for an album,
mhm.
even
Yeah.
like similar to like Sergeant Pepper, but even more so. And you're like that's not what it was expected
Mhm,
of a bar band from Hamburg. They
mhm,
could have just stayed to be a kind of poppy bar band and stay in that zone, but they chose to mature and grow and have different influences from, the East and,
mhm.
Hinduism and all kinds of different things influencing where they were going.
Yeah.
Being allowed to do that instead of saying, "Well, you gotta stay like you were in Help,"
Mm,
you know? And people, like, tend to see like the familiar. And
Mhm.
fans will be like, will rebel, against people that go outside their expectation
Yeah.
sometimes,
Well, I would hope that the Beatles probably found more support as they evolved and changed than the haters that left, you know? So,
Yeah,
I think overall, it was good for them.
good trajectory. Versus like sometimes if you're in a band, it's like, well, I'm not gonna play, Hotel California anymore. Then it's like, well, that's who you are. It's but like, maybe no. It's like, no, that's not who we are. It's like, well, that's what your fan thinks you are. That's what
Mhm.
that diehard thinks you are. But that doesn't mean you have to stay where they are because
Mhm.
you might have wrote that when you're 22. When by
Yeah.
the time you're 33, it's like, well, I'm not feeling that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I find myself very proud to be a multi-hyphenate, creator. I wear that with pride.
Yeah, because sometimes like you can have a big success when you're young as an artist.
Mm.
And then people want to pigeons like they forget like you did that when you were in your 20s.
Mhm.
And now you might be 40, you might be whatever age you are, right? And that's not who I am anymore. Like, but they kind of want to time box you, like that's the way they see you.
Mhm.
And then you get pigeonholed for their expectation. But it's like, are you gonna meet their expectation, gonna be where you are?
Yeah.
And like hopefully
Yeah.
they can grow with you. And if they don't, that's fine. Because sometimes the people like law of attraction, like people you like if they don't grow with you, then they're not in your circle anymore. Right.
Mhm.
You kind of
Yeah.
go. And if your fans grow to like the direction you're going, then that's fine. If they don't, they can check something else out. But it's like that. I'm not gonna stay because their expectation says I should stay like in my mindset from 10 years ago.
Yeah, because then at that point, you're staying for them and not you. And
Yeah.
I'm staying for other people and not myself. So,
Well, I think sometimes if you're in a bigger organizations, you might get stuck in
mm,
that because
mhm,
there's a responsibility. And I've seen like artists say, well, like I've got my road crew, I've got my management, I got all these people depending on me still doing that
sure.
versus doing this. Like if I go do this, well, then they can't, they're not going to meet their mortgage. So then you're
Yeah.
like, well, am I responsible for all these people?
Well, yeah, thankfully, I hope people aren't depending on me for mortgages and everything,
Yeah,
not
but
yet.
that's how some the worlds get. I mean, they get that
Yeah,
big. But like
yeah,
if you're in the indie world, like you hopefully you don't get that kind of albatross around your neck. He's like, "Oh, I don't need that," but
mhm,
I need to
yeah,
have be nimble. Something about being independent and the kind of lower budget is you don't have all that largesse kind of weighing you down,
yeah,
right?
for
Because that's
sure.
why you're able to kind of pick different projects
Mhm.
because you're not kind of stuck on the train. Like a train's
No.
going on the track, you gotta go there. Like, "No, I wanna go here."
Yeah,
Like,
and I
"I'm
get
there."
to exactly, and sometimes I table some projects. The short film I did, the comedy one, I had that for 2 years, 2, 3 years, just kind of sitting on my computer, and so sometimes it's the wind changes, and now it feels like I wanna do this one, and, the wind changes again, and, "Oh, I remember this script from 6 months ago, let's do that one." Like, it's very fun and, exciting, and it's really true to how I'm feeling in the moment, and hopefully how the other folks that I work with are feeling in the moment.
Yeah, it's cool when you get a collective and people are kinda in the main like, you have
Mhm.
that law of attraction, like, the people around you at the time you're doing
Mhm.
any project are kinda aligned. They're kinda radiating in the same frequency, so it's all kinda it's working, and then when it
Mhm.
doesn't work,
Mm.
you go somewhere else,
Yeah.
that's so it's having that ultimate freedom, I
Mhm.
think it's interesting where people kinda put their own ceilings on themselves, was like
Mm.
it could be like they it's like, "Well, somebody's telling me I can't do it," but actually, when you look at the looking glass, it's like, you're the one saying you can't do it.
Yeah.
You seem to not be
100%.
as restricted by other you seem to be very more expansive
Yeah.
in the way that
Yeah,
you're thinking that you're not saying, "Well, I can't do this. I can't do that." They're more
for
"Hey,
sure.
I wanna do this. I
Mm.
wanna do that."
Yeah. It's very somewhat terrifying, but also very exciting to think about where am I gonna be in 4 years, 5 years? There's like you said, the ceiling is put by myself. So wherever I envision is where we're going to go and where I'm going to go. And so it's exciting and thrilling, somewhat pressure, but I'm glad as an indie creator to have my own future in my hands and try whatever I can to get there.
So what do you think about like all these AI technologies and regarding like the art that you're doing?
Yeah.
In terms of is it a tool? Is it an assistant? Is it actually a hindrance?
Mhm.
Is it a help? Is it not a help? Is like what do you feel?
Yeah, I've been exploring my feelings around AI. It's been happening so fast. Initially, I thought that this would be a tool for helping me sort of take all my thoughts and help organize and do that. And I would, talk to ChatGPT about ideas that I had. But what I found was that I became less open-minded and creative almost. I
Mm,
found that, oh, if ChatGPT can do this for me, well, then I don't need to come up with, 5 different scenarios for the scene, or I don't have to come up with a character arc. And I found myself just becoming so frustrated within my own capabilities. I even I would tell people, oh, I'm not a good writer anymore. ChatGPT could do a better job. And suddenly I'm thinking, whoa, how has this machine, this tool, degraded my self-esteem so much so that I don't even think I can write anymore. That's what I love to do. And so I've had to take a step back from ChatGPT just in my own personal journey to reclaim some of that creativity that I think I lost when I
yeah.
was using it.
That's the thing I'm worried about when I talk to people
Mm,
about it, because like I kind of live in a world where a lot of artists are using like the digital audio
mm,
workstations, and
yeah.
they don't actually play instruments. There's a lot of people who are in music that are producers
Hmm.
and are moving clips around, and they're more like, okay, more like an engineer producer, but you actually can't play a bass to worth anything. They can't play. They can like play a guitar. You can't play a sax. You can't play anything. But
Yeah.
you can figure how to move things around, or that's a different kind of space than somebody who actually is a master of an instrument.
Yeah.
And I think,
Exactly.
like, when you lose the ability to actually be able to noodle on your
Mm,
instrument, noodling on the instrument is where a lot of stuff comes from, but if you're just taking stuff that already exists and moving it around,
hmm.
then you start to get limited by what you are moving around.
Exactly. It's like when you're with a language, they say, use it or lose it. I think that's happening with like critical thinking and creativity and all of these things with AI. So I use it very apprehensively. I use it for like work or if I have like an error message, things like that
Yeah, yeah.
seem
I use it for, like, work.
technical.
I use it for, like,
Yeah.
workflow. If I wanna get, like, some of my
Mm,
production tasks so I can
hmm.
actually do more live shows, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
wanna create an AI agent to be me
No.
interviewing
Yeah.
people, and
Mm-mm.
that's where some of the tech bros will say, "Oh, you could actually make an AI bass player."
Mm,
What's that bass player gonna do? It's gonna grab bass lines that already exist from a library that was already played and mix them around to make it seem like they're new.
yeah.
But it's not
Yeah.
actually the same as actually going to a human bass player and having them feel something and give me
Hmm.
back what they feel, because
Yeah.
the machine doesn't feel. And so
It can't.
it can make something very convincing, and
It
that's the
can. And
danger, I think.
it's terrifying. Yeah, yeah. I've become worse at being able to like distinguish like fake things and as a social worker, I'm terrified of losing that human element. So I am definitely wary of AI in creative spaces.
Yeah, I think it's like people have to remember it's kinda like a junk food thing
Mm,
versus like the reason why you go to, like, a non-junk foods place, like a place that's a restaurant, like a local diner,
mhm,
instead of going and picking up some taco from some big chain,
mhm,
right? Or if we go to that food truck, is because the human being has something very unique. There's nothing like any that food truck has food that no other truck has,
mhm.
right? That
Yeah.
diner does the pancake different than any other diner, right?
Mhm.
But if I go to the chain, it's convenient and I get that thing in any city I go to, it's pretty much gonna be the same thing. But is that really what you want?
Mm.
And
$100%. We're
I
too
think it's
comfortable.
like junk food stuff, like junk stuff.
Exactly.
And it
Mhm.
seems okay it satisfies the moment, but is it really substantial?
Yeah, I think we as creatives or as humans, we just got to go through that phase where we're like, oh my gosh, junk food, we have this option, let's eat it all, and then we're gonna realize, oh, that did not make me feel good.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
think it's like
hopefully,
people are gonna want like I've seen like a rebelling that people are going back and listening to like
mm,
singer-songwriters. They're going back and listen
yeah,
to like the punk movement from the
mhm,
70s, like late 70s to mid 80s. And
yeah,
they're like, there's something authentic about the Clash. There's
mm,
something
mhm,
authentic about the Ramones, something
yeah,
cool about David Byrne and the Talking Heads. Could that happen again?
yeah,
In the way, like, could you get a band like the Talking Heads
mhm,
in this environment? Would they allow them to actually happen? It's like, I don't know, because like it's like that is something that was so unique in David Byrne's approach. Their whole
mhm.
it's like that's very human. It's
It
like,
is,
yeah, where's that coming from?
yeah,
You're gonna make AI rock stars. That's like the new
wow,
thing is to make AI like fake cartoon or character or like these things that are like really, and
oh
it's gonna
boy,
get big, but I think
mm,
there's gonna be a rejection of it
I
because
think
it's like
so,
I'd rather see somebody on stage with a guitar like a Joni Mitchell
yeah,
actually telling a story. Like
mhm,
whoever the future Joni Mitchell, the future Dylan, the future Hendrix, whoever's gonna be out in that kind of space, I think I'd rather see that.
yeah, I hope we get there soon. I hope we all get there soon.
I think people will have to go through it to get out of it.
Mhm, yeah,
Hopefully, we won't
I
have to
I
stay in it
did,
too long.
yeah,
We won't
mhm.
stay in too long.
Oh,
Then don't
wow,
let the door hit you on the way out. But, like, yeah, I think there's future for humans because, like, no matter what, like, people want that food
mhm,
truck thing,
yeah,
they want that diner
mm,
thing. They wanna
yeah,
go see a play in New York and see an actor
mhm,
on stage doing it live,
yeah,
right? That live play. Have
mhm.
you thought of doing anything live with the type of media you're doing?
Yeah, I'm working with a couple of wonderful women. We are trying to put on a 10-minute stage play, musical actually. So I have a couple of friends. I have a lot of actor friends in New York who would be
Cool.
happy to be on a theater and a stage. And that was my goal for 2025 was to write a stage play. So I'm halfway done with
Awesome.
the year. I should probably get on it.
That's awesome, and I love that. I mean, this something I used to watch, like, the Playhouse 90s, that was, like, live TV. Going back to
Mm.
watch some of the old honeymoons, those are live. Yeah, live TV there's something about live when
Mhm.
something's done. We even watch Saturday Night Live. The fact that it's, like, in the moment, there
Yeah.
can't be, like, that little nugget that happens in the live moment, the
Mhm.
interpretation every night that you do that show, the actor's gonna do it a little bit different,
100%.
and
And that's what's so exciting.
that's what I like. That's the nugget I like in a world where people are like, "I want you to be able to just recycle this over and over and over." I'm like, "That's nice that you can do that, but that's not what I'm about."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So that's cool that you're into that. I look forward to hearing about that. But
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
so I want everybody to know we have your Instagram,
Mhm.
Starberry Jam Productions. That's clickable, not at the moment, but within the podcast description and on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube that is fully clickable. So you can that will be out there. We're going to be on every platform. You can check out our podcast by tomorrow, and we were live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.